The Black Dragon Gate. Dedication? This series is dedicated to the sincere practitioner Scott. His YouTube handle is Vajrapani Hum, whose unwavering devotion to meditation and Dharma sharing has resulted in hundreds of contemplative offerings for the benefit of all beings. Over many years of practice, his work has revealed something essential about the way of the unborn. Realization does not end in silence but flowers as compassionate activity within the world. Through sound, image, rhythm, and contemplative visualization, his meditative creations invite practitioners to enter the living field of the Dharma. His recent meditation centered upon the Black Dragon Eye Mandala serves as a powerful example of how the symbolic language of awakening can become a direct gateway into contemplative recognition. May this series stand as a gesture of gratitude for his dedication and as a support for all who seek to realize the unborn mind. Chapter 1. The Emergence of the Black Dragon Gate. There are moments in life when something shifts, but nothing seems to have changed. You're still in the same room. The same thoughts pass through your mind. The same world appears before your eyes. And yet, something is different. It may come quietly. A pause between thoughts. A sense of space where there used to be tension. A subtle feeling that what you are is not limited to what you've always assumed. This is where the Black Dragon Gate begins. Not as something mystical or distant, but as something immediate, something already present, waiting to be noticed. The gate is not a physical place. It is not hidden in a monastery or locked behind secret teachings. It is the moment you begin to question the assumption that you are only your thoughts, your body, or your personal story. Most of us move through life identified with a constant stream of thinking. I am this. I feel that. This is happening to me. But what if that isn't the full picture? What if these thoughts are simply appearances like clouds moving across the sky? And what if you are not the clouds, but the sky itself? The Black Dragon Gate is the recognition of that sky-like nature. It is not something you create. It is not something you achieve. It is something you begin to notice when, even briefly, the constant mental noise softens and what remains is clear, open, and aware. In this sense, the Black Dragon does not represent something frightening or supernatural. It represents the unknown, the vast, ungraspable depth of awareness itself. Black, not as darkness, but as the fertile void from which everything arises. Dragon not as a creature, but as a symbol of living power, dynamic, fluid, and impossible to pin down. The gate is the threshold where you stop trying to control or define your experience and begin to see it directly. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. The mind may try to grasp it, explain it, or even dismiss it. But the gate does not open through effort. It opens through recognition, a simple shift from being caught in thoughts to noticing that thoughts are appearing, from feeling like a separate self to sensing a deeper presence in which everything is happening. This is not an escape from life. In fact, it is the beginning of truly entering it. Because when you are no longer completely entangled in every thought and reaction, something else becomes available. Clarity, ease, a natural sense of connection. The world doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it changes. You begin to see that everything your thoughts, your emotions, your perceptions, is arising within a field of awareness that is already whole, already complete. This is the first glimpse through the Black Dragon Gate. Not a final realization, not a dramatic transformation, just a quiet, undeniable shift. You are not only the story you've been telling yourself, you are the space in which that story appears. And once this is seen even faintly, the gate has already begun to open. Chapter 2. The Dragon and the Ground. As the first glimpses deepen, something begins to stand out more clearly. There is what changes, and there is what does not. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Experiences appear, unfold, and disappear. This is easy to see. But what is not so obvious, at least at first, is that all of this is happening somewhere. not in a physical location, but within a kind of open presence. A silent background that is always here, whether you notice it or not. This is what we call the ground. Not ground as in something solid or fixed, but as the underlying field in which all experience appears. It does not come and go. It does not change with your mood. It does not improve or decline. It is simply there. Before a thought arises, it is there. While the thought is happening, it is there. After the thought disappears, it is still there. The same is true for every emotion, every sensation, every moment of your life. The ground does not interfere with what appears within it. It allows everything. Now, within this ground, there is movement. Thoughts move. Feelings move. Perceptions move. This movement, this living, shifting activity, is what we call the dragon. The dragon is not separate from the ground. It is the expression of it. Like waves moving across the surface of the ocean, the dragon is the dynamic display of what is otherwise still and open. A thought is the dragon moving. An emotion is the dragon moving. Even the sense of I, the feeling of being a separate self, is part of this movement. At first, it may seem like there are two things, a still background and moving experiences within it. But if you look more closely, something interesting begins to reveal itself. The movement does not exist outside the ground. It is made of the same substance, if we can even call it that. A thought is not separate from awareness. It is made of awareness. An emotion is not happening somewhere else. It is appearing as a modulation of that same open field. In this way, the dragon and the ground are not two. They cannot be separated. The ground is not disturbed by the dragon, and the dragon cannot exist without the ground. Stillness and movement, silence and sound, emptiness and form. They are different in appearance, but not different in essence. This recognition begins to shift something important. Before, you may have tried to escape the movement, to quiet the mind, to get rid of certain emotions, to hold on to peaceful states. But now it becomes clear. The movement is not the problem. The dragon is not something you need to control, because even in its most intense expressions, it is still arising within and as the same unchanging ground. Nothing is outside of it. This includes confusion. This includes distraction. This includes even the feeling of being lost. All of it belongs. All of it is part of the display. As this becomes more obvious, a kind of relaxation begins to take place. Not because everything becomes calm, but because you no longer feel the need to fight what is already happening. You begin to see the ground is always at rest. The dragon is always in motion, and yet they are not in conflict. One does not need to defeat the other. They are already functioning together perfectly, naturally, without effort. This is a deeper layer of the gate. Not just recognizing awareness as a background, but seeing that everything arising within it is not separate from it. The dragon is the ground in motion. The ground is the dragon at rest. And you are not outside of this. You are not something observing it from a distance. You are this whole movement, this whole stillness, this inseparable field in which both appear. When this is glimpsed, even briefly, something simplifies. There is less struggle. Less need to divide experience into what should be happening and what should not. Because everything without exception is already included. The gate opens a little wider here, not by adding anything new, but by revealing the unity of what was never divided. Chapter 3. The Dragon and the Storehouse Consciousness. As the movement of the dragon becomes clearer, another layer begins to reveal itself. Not all thoughts feel the same. Some pass quickly, like a sound that comes and goes. Others seem to carry weight. They return again and again. They shape how you see yourself. They influence how you respond to the world. It can begin to feel as though certain patterns are running on their own. You may even wonder, where are these coming from? This is where the idea of the storehouse consciousness can be helpful. Think of it, not as something mysterious or distant, but as a kind of deep reservoir within the field of experience. A place where impressions are held, Every experience you've had, every reaction, every memory, every emotional imprint leaves a kind of trace. Most of the time, you're not aware of these traces, but they are still there, and under the right conditions, they rise to the surface. A thought appears, and it feels familiar. An emotion arises, and it seems stronger than the moment calls for. A reaction happens before you even have time to think. This is the storehouse at work, not as a fixed structure, but as a living accumulation of patterns. In the language of the gate, this too is the dragon. But now we begin to see that the dragon has depth. What appears on the surface, your immediate thoughts and feelings, is only part of the movement. Beneath that, there are layers of stored tendencies, habits of perception, emotional imprints, conditioned ways of seeing and reacting. These do not belong to a solid self. They are simply patterns that have formed over time. And like all patterns, they continue as long as the conditions support them. This can feel personal. It can feel like this is who I am. But if you look carefully, you'll notice these patterns also arise and pass. Even the most persistent tendencies are not constant. They come forward, take shape, and dissolve only to return again under similar conditions. This is important because it means that what feels fixed is not actually fixed. The storehouse is not a prison. It is a process, a dynamic field of stored impressions that continue to express themselves as part of the dragon's movement. Now here is where the understanding deepens. The storehouse, like everything else, is not separate from the ground. It exists within the same open awareness. It is made of the same substance. Even the deepest patterns, those that feel automatic, even overwhelming, are still appearing within that same field you have already begun to recognize. Nothing is outside of it. This changes how you relate to what arises. Instead of trying to eliminate these patterns, you begin to notice them. A reaction begins, and you see it forming. An old emotion surfaces, and you feel it without immediately becoming it. A familiar thought appears, and you recognize its shape. This is not suppression, and it is not analysis. It is simple recognition. And that recognition begins to loosen the hold these patterns have, not by force, but by bringing them into the light of awareness. What was once automatic begins to become visible, and what is visible is no longer as binding. The storehouse does not need to be emptied. It begins to transform through being seen. Patterns may still arise. Old tendencies may still appear. But something is different now. They are no longer running the entire system unnoticed. They are part of the dragon's movement, and the dragon is already inseparable from the ground. Even conditioning is included. Even habit is included. Even the sense of being stuck is included. Nothing falls outside the field. And because of that, nothing needs to be rejected. This is a subtle but powerful shift. You are no longer trying to become a better version of the self. You are beginning to see that what you took to be the self is a collection of patterns moving within awareness. And awareness itself is untouched by those patterns. The gate opens further here, not by removing the past, but by seeing it clearly. The dragon continues to move. The storehouse continues to express. But the illusion that this movement defines what you are begins to fade. And in that fading, there is space. A space that has always been present, but is now, perhaps for the first time, consciously seen. Chapter 4. The Eye of Prajñā. As the gate opens further, something begins to change in how seeing itself is understood. Not what you see, but the way seeing happens. Up to now, it may still feel as though there is you on one side and what you experience on the other. You are here. The world is out there. You are aware of something. This seems natural, almost unquestionable. But as the recognition deepens, this division begins to soften. You notice a thought, but where, exactly, is the boundary between the one who notices and the thought being noticed? You feel an emotion, but where is the line between the feeler and the feeling? You hear a sound. Is it happening out there? Or is it appearing within the same field of awareness as everything else? If you look carefully, without trying to answer conceptually, something subtle begins to reveal itself. The separation is not as solid as it seemed. This is where the Eye of Prajñā begins to open. Prajñā is often translated as wisdom, but not wisdom as knowledge or accumulated understanding. It is a direct seeing, a seeing that does not divide experience into observer and observed, a seeing that recognizes the whole field at once. In this seeing, there is no distance, no gap between you and what is appearing. The thought is not over there, being watched by you. The thought is appearing as part of the same awareness you are. The same is true for everything. Sounds, sensations, emotions, perceptions. They are not separate objects being experienced by a separate subject. They are expressions within a single, undivided field. At first, this can feel difficult to grasp. Because the mind is used to dividing, it wants to locate a center, a point from which everything is being observed. But when you look for that center directly, something interesting happens. You can't quite find it. There are thoughts about a center, feelings associated with a center, sensations that seem to define a location, but the observer itself remains elusive. It cannot be pinned down. And this is the key. The Eye of Prajñā does not find a better observer. It reveals that the observer was never separate to begin with. There is only seeing, only knowing, only this seamless display of experience, appearing within and as awareness. No inside, no outside, no clear dividing line. Just this. When this is glimpsed even briefly, it can feel like a quiet shift in perspective. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just simpler, more direct. The effort to hold everything together begins to relax, because there is no longer a need to maintain the idea of a separate observer at the center. Experience is simply happening, and it is known, instantly, without distance. This is the function of prajñā, not adding anything new, but removing the false division that was never actually there. Seeing without separation, knowing without a knower standing apart from what is known. And as this becomes more familiar, something else begins to fade. The sense of being isolated, of being a separate entity moving through an external world. Instead, there is a growing sense of intimacy, not emotional closeness, but a fundamental non-distance. Everything is already touching everything else because it is all appearing within the same field. This is not a belief. It is something that can be directly noticed. Right now, a sound arises, a thought follows, a sensation is felt. All of it appears in the same place, not in a physical location, but in awareness itself. And that awareness is not divided. The Eye of Prajñā sees this clearly, not as a theory, not as a philosophy, but as the simple nature of experience. The gate opens wider here, because the illusion of separation begins to lose its foundation. There is no longer a solid boundary to maintain, only the natural, effortless unfolding of what is. And in that unfolding, nothing is outside, nothing is other, nothing is apart, only this seamless, living field, seeing itself. Chapter 5. The Wheels of Rainbow Wisdom. As the Eye of Prajñā opens, the field of experience is no longer divided. But something else now begins to reveal itself. Not just that everything is one seamless display, but that this display has qualities, different tones, different energies, different ways of expressing itself. Emotions, for example, are no longer just reactions to be managed. They begin to show themselves as forms of movement within awareness, each with its own texture, its own intelligence. Anger feels sharp, fast, and intense. Sadness feels heavy, slow, and deep. Joy feels light, open, and expansive. At first, these may still seem like disturbances, something to fix, something to control. But as seeing deepens, another possibility appears. What if these are not problems, but expressions? What if each emotion carries a kind of clarity within it when it is not resisted or distorted? This is what is meant by the wheels of rainbow wisdom. Rainbow, because the display of experience is not a single, flat tone. It is multicolored, rich with variation. Each color represents a different way awareness expresses itself. Each movement of the dragon carries a certain flavor. And wheels, because this display is dynamic, always turning, always shifting, always transforming. No state lasts, no emotion remains fixed. Everything is in motion, but within that motion, something can be recognized. When anger is seen clearly without immediately reacting or suppressing it, it reveals a kind of precision, a sharpness that cuts through confusion. When sadness is allowed to be felt fully without turning it into a story, it reveals depth, a capacity to open into what is present, without resistance. When joy arises naturally without grasping, it reveals a lightness, a freedom that does not depend on conditions. In this way, what once felt like obstacles begin to show another side, not because they have changed, but because the way they are seen has changed. The distortion comes not from the emotion itself, but from how it is held. When anger is resisted, it becomes frustration. When it is acted out blindly, it becomes harm. But when it is seen clearly, it is simply energy moving, alive, and precise. The same is true for every emotion. Each one, when met with awareness, reveals its own kind of intelligence. This is the wisdom aspect, not something added from outside, but something already present within the movement itself. The rainbow is not separate from the dragon. It is the dragon's display seen clearly, and the ground is not separate from the rainbow. It is the open field in which all colors appear. Again, not two. Stillness and movement, emptiness and expression, ground and display, all of it functioning together. As this becomes more obvious, the relationship with experience shifts even further. You are no longer trying to get rid of certain states and hold on to others. You begin to trust the movement, not blindly, but through direct seeing. You see that everything that arises is part of a larger unfolding. Even confusion has its place, even restlessness, even doubt. Nothing is outside the field, and because of that, everything can be met. This does not mean acting on every impulse. It does not mean losing discernment. In fact, the opposite begins to happen. As awareness becomes clearer, responses become more natural, less reactive, more appropriate to the moment. Not because you are following rules, but because you are no longer clouded by automatic patterns in the same way. The wheels turn, but they are no longer spinning out of control. They are seen, and in that seeing, there is balance, a quiet alignment with what is happening. Life continues to move colorfully, dynamically, unpredictably, but there is less resistance to the movement, less need to freeze it, fix it, or force it into a certain shape. Because it is understood, the rainbow does not need to be controlled. It needs to be seen, and in that seeing, its wisdom is already present. The gate opens wider here, not away from experience, but into its full richness. Nothing flattened, nothing excluded, just the vivid, ever-changing display, recognized as it is. Chapter 6. The Sound of the Void. As the gate continues to open, the field of experience is no longer only seen, it is also heard in a new way, not just as sound, but as something revealing the nature of reality itself. Ordinarily, sound appears simple. A noise happens. It begins. It lasts for a moment. Then it ends. But rarely do we look more closely. Rarely do we ask, what is sound actually? If you listen carefully, something subtle becomes apparent. A sound does not come from a solid place, and it does not go to a solid place. It arises, it vibrates, and it disappears, leaving nothing behind. No trace, no residue, and yet, while it is present, it feels vivid, almost tangible. This is the nature of all phenomena, arising, appearing, dissolving, without ever becoming something fixed. This becomes especially clear in the meditation created by Scott's YouTube video, Step into the Luminous Void of the Unborn, Dragon Eye Chittamatra Zen Percussion and Rainbow Light. Within that space, the dimension of the mandala becomes vivid through the presence of the damaru, the small double-headed drum used in tantric practice. Its rhythm is rapid, almost pulsing, a sharp, repeating beat that seems to appear and vanish at the same time. It does not linger. Each sound is complete in itself, and gone the instant it is heard. And yet, the effect is powerful. The sound fills the space. It captures attention. It feels immediate, alive. This is what makes it such a perfect expression of the void. Not emptiness as absence, but emptiness as no fixed substance. The Dhammaru does not produce something that stays. It reveals something that happens. Each beat arises from silence and returns to silence. But the silence is not disturbed by the sound. It is not broken. In fact, the sound depends on the silence. Without silence, there would be no contrast, no way for sound to appear at all. In this way, silence and sound are not separate. They function together. The sound is the movement. The silence is the ground. The dragon and the ground once again, revealing themselves in another form. But here, something becomes even clearer. The sound does not leave the silence. It does not travel somewhere else when it ends. It simply dissolves back into what was always present. If you listen closely, you can notice this directly. A sound arises, and instead of following it, you rest in the hearing itself. The sound comes and goes, but the capacity to hear the awareness in which it appears remains unchanged. This is the sound of the void, not a special sound, not something mystical or rare, but the recognition that every sound without exception has this same nature. It appears from nowhere, it takes shape, it disappears without leaving a trace, and all of it happens within awareness. Even the sense of continuity, the idea that sounds are happening in a sequence, is part of the same display. Moment by moment, everything is arising fresh. Nothing is carried over. Nothing is held in place. The Dhammaru makes this unmistakable. Its rapid rhythm exposes the fleeting nature of each moment. Each beat is complete. Each beat is gone. And yet, there is a sense of flow, a continuity that seems real but cannot be found in any single sound. This is how experience works. Not as a solid stream, but as a series of appearances, each one arising and dissolving instantly. Seen in this way, something begins to relax. The need to hold on to experience softens, because it becomes clear. There is nothing to hold. Everything is already passing. Everything is already dissolving. And yet, nothing is lost, because what it appears within the open field of awareness remains untouched, unchanged, silent, even in the midst of sound. The gate opens wider here, through listening, through the simple recognition that every sound is a doorway, revealing the same truth. Form is empty, and emptiness is not other than form. The Dhammaru beats, the sound arises, the sound fades, and in that rise and fall, the void is heard, not as absence, but as the living, ever-present field, in which all things come and go. Chapter 7. Meditation on the Dragon Eye. Up to this point, the gate has been opening through understanding, through noticing, through seeing, through listening. Now, we come to something more direct, not a new idea, but a way of resting in what has already been revealed. This is what we call meditation on the Dragon Eye. At first, meditation may sound like a technique, something you do, something you practice, something you try to get better at. But in this context, meditation is much simpler than that. It is not about controlling the mind, not about stopping thoughts, not about achieving a special state. It is about recognizing and gently remaining with that recognition. If you look at the image before you, the dragon eye is already present. At the center, there is a luminous point, clear, radiant, unmoving. Around it, concentric gray rings extend outward. These rings are not random. They represent the movement of experience, the layered unfolding of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions. Always shifting, always expanding, always in motion. The center does not move. The rings do. This is the key to the meditation. You do not try to stop the rings. You do not try to collapse them back into the center. You simply recognize both, the stillness at the center and the movement surrounding it. The dragon eye is not found by escaping the movement. It is recognized within it. So rather than trying to enter meditation, you begin by noticing what is already here. You are aware. Before any effort, before any adjustment, before any technique, awareness is already present. That is the center. Thoughts arise. They ripple outward like the gray rings. Emotions move. They circulate, expand, dissolve. Sounds appear and fade, each one like a pulse moving through the field. These are the rings, and just like in the image, they do not disturb the center. They move within it. They are made of it. The invitation is to rest as that center, not by holding on to it, but by recognizing that it is already what you are. Thoughts may arise. Let them move through the rings. Sounds may come and go. Let them ripple outward. Sensations may shift. Let them circulate freely. Nothing needs to be pushed away. Nothing needs to be held. The dragon continues to move. The rings continue to turn, and the center remains unchanged. At first, it may feel like you are trying to stay at the center, trying to avoid being pulled into the rings. But even that effort is just another movement, another ring. So instead of resisting it, you notice that too. Gradually, something softens. The distinction becomes clearer. Movement is allowed to be movement. Stillness is recognized as stillness, and the two are no longer in conflict. You begin to see. The rings do not obscure the center. They express it. Without the rings, the center would not be visible. Without movement, stillness would not be known. They reveal each other. This is meditation on the dragon eye, not withdrawing from experience, but seeing it clearly as a dynamic display around an unmoving center, and recognizing that both are inseparable. Over time, this becomes natural, less like something you are doing, and more like something you are noticing again and again, whether sitting quietly or moving through daily life. The same structure is present, a still center, a moving field. The eye does not chase the rings, and the rings never leave the eye. The gate, here, is no longer something you approach. It is something you are already within, because the center has never been absent, and the movement has never been outside of it. So you rest not by effort, but by recognition. The luminous center, the concentric gray rings, the whole mandala, alive and unfolding, seen clearly, as it is. Chapter 8. The Bodhi-Child. As the gate opens fully into lived experience, something begins to reveal itself at the very heart of the mandala, not as an idea, not as a symbol to be believed in, but as a living presence. Until now, we have spoken of the ground, the dragon, the eye, the movement, and the stillness. But here, these are no longer understood as separate aspects. They begin to show themselves as a single, unified expression. This is what we call the Bodhi-Child. The name may sound unusual at first, but it points to something very simple and very immediate. A quality of awareness that is fresh, unburdened, unfixed, not naive in the ordinary sense, but free from the weight of constant interpretation. The Bodhi-Child is not something you become. It is what remains when experience is no longer filtered through the old patterns of the storehouse in the same way. When each moment is allowed to appear as it is, without immediately being shaped into a story, something new begins to be felt. Or rather, something that has always been here begins to be noticed. A sense of immediacy, a kind of openness that does not need to defend itself, a natural responsiveness that is not pre-planned. This is the Bodhi-Child. It is not separate from the ground. It arises from it yet is not other than it. It is not separate from the dragon. It moves as the dragon yet is not confined to its patterns. It is not separate from the eye. It sees yet is not located anywhere. In this way, the Bodhi-Child is the living unity of all three, not a concept, but the direct expression of awakened awareness functioning within experience. At times, it may feel like a return to something very simple, almost like seeing the world without the usual layers of commentary. Colors seem clearer, sounds more immediate, moments more complete. But this is not about heightened perception. It is about unfiltered presence. Nothing added, nothing taken away. The Bodhi-Child does not stand apart from life. It moves within it freely, naturally, without the constant need to define or control. When a situation calls for action, it responds. When stillness is present, it rests. There is no rigid identity being maintained, no fixed position to defend. This can feel unfamiliar at first, because much of what we call self is built from repetition, from patterns stored and replayed, from reactions that have become automatic. But as these patterns are seen more clearly, they begin to loosen, and in that loosening, space appears. Within that space, the Bodhi-Child is already functioning, not as something separate from you, but as what you are, when you are no longer confined to what you thought you were. It does not need to announce itself. It does not claim anything. It simply lives, responding to each moment as it arises, without carrying the past forward unnecessarily, without projecting into the future. Just this, here, alive. This does not mean the storehouse disappears. Patterns may still arise, old habits may still surface, but they are no longer the center. They are part of the movement, no longer mistaken for the whole. The Bodhi-Child is not bound by them. It includes them, without being defined by them. There is a lightness here, not because life becomes easy, but because the burden of constant self-construction begins to fall away. You no longer need to be someone in the same way. You are simply present, and from that presence, appropriate action emerges naturally. Sometimes quiet, sometimes active, sometimes uncertain, but always immediate, always grounded in what is actually happening. This is not perfection. It is authenticity free from the need to appear a certain way. The gate, at this point, is no longer something opening or closing. It is fully integrated, because the Bodhi-Child is not standing at the threshold. It is living within the entire field, the ground, the dragon, the eye, all functioning as one seamless reality. And within that reality, this simple, living presence, awake, responsive, and free, is already here, not as something to attain, but as something to recognize, and once recognized, to trust. Chapter 9. Transmission Beyond Form. As the Bodhi-Child comes into view, not as an idea, but as a living presence, another question naturally arises. How is this shared? In many traditions, transmission is associated with form. A teacher, a student, a ceremony, a set of words or gestures passed from one to another. These forms can be meaningful. They can point, they can support, they can clarify, but they are not the transmission itself. Because what is being transmitted here is not an object. It is not a teaching that can be handed over, not a state that can be given. It is recognition, and recognition cannot be transferred in the usual way. It can only occur. This is what is meant by transmission beyond form. At its essence, transmission is the moment when the same seeing awakens in another, not because something was added, but because something was seen directly. A word may trigger it, a silence may allow it, a glance, a question, a moment of stillness. Any of these can serve as a catalyst, but none of them contain the transmission. They only point. The recognition itself happens within the person. And yet, even that way of speaking is not quite accurate, because what is recognized is not inside anyone. It is the same awareness that has been present all along, not divided, not owned, not located. So when transmission occurs, it is not something moving from one person to another. It is more like a mirror being cleared, or a light being uncovered. The teacher does not give it, The student does not receive it. It is simply revealed. This is why form can never guarantee transmission. You can repeat the words. You can perform the rituals. You can follow the structure perfectly. And still, the recognition may not happen, because it does not depend on form. At the same time, transmission can occur outside of any formal setting. A simple moment of clarity, a direct pointing, a sudden seeing that cuts through the usual patterns. No ceremony, no structure, and yet, something undeniable shifts. This is transmission beyond form. It does not reject form, but it is not confined by it. Forms become skillful means ways of pointing, ways of creating the conditions in which recognition may occur. But they are not the source. The source is the same ground that has been present from the beginning, the same awareness in which all experience arises. And when that is recognized, even briefly, something is shared not as information, but as presence. This is why authentic transmission feels different from learning. It is not about accumulating knowledge. It is about seeing something directly. And once seen, it cannot be unseen in the same way. Even if it fades, even if old patterns return, something has shifted. A reference point not outside, but within the field of awareness itself. This has implications, because it means that true transmission is always available, not dependent on a particular person, place, or moment, though those may serve as catalysts. The gate, at this stage, is no longer something that needs to be passed through again and again. It is recognized as always open, and transmission is simply the recognition of that openness shared, reflected, echoed across different expressions of the same awareness. The Bodhi-Child moves within this naturally, responding where needed, pointing when appropriate, remaining silent when words would only add confusion. There is no need to claim authority, no need to establish position, because what is being pointed to does not belong to anyone. It cannot be owned. It cannot be improved. It can only be recognized. This is the quiet dignity of transmission beyond form. Nothing special, nothing added, just the simple, direct recognition of what has always been here. And when this is seen, even briefly, the gate is not passed from one to another. It is seen to be the same gate. Everywhere. Chapter 10. Living the Gate. With this final chapter, nothing new is being introduced. And that is the point. Because what has been unfolding through each stage of the gate is not leading to a conclusion, but to a way of living, not as a system, not as a method, not as something to maintain, but as something already present, now fully recognized as inseparable from everyday life. The ground has been seen. The dragon has been understood. The eye has opened. The Bodhi-Child has begun to move. Transmission has revealed itself as ever present. Now, all of this comes together in the most ordinary place, your life as it is. There is no separate realm where this needs to be applied, no special condition required. Whatever is happening right now is the gate, not in theory, not as a perspective to hold, but as the direct field of experience, just as it appears, waking up in the morning, drinking coffee, speaking with someone, feeling irritation, feeling joy, feeling nothing at all of it, nothing excluded. At first, it may seem like something needs to be maintained, a clarity to hold on to, a state to return to. But this too begins to fall away, because what has been recognized does not depend on being remembered. It does not come and go in the way experiences do. Even when attention narrows, even when old patterns take over, the ground is still present. The dragon is still moving. The eye is still open. The Bodhi-Child is still functioning whether noticed or not. Nothing has been lost, only unnoticed. And even that is part of the movement. So living the gate is not about staying in a particular state. It is about no longer dividing life into in the gate and out of the gate. There is no outside. Even confusion happens within the same field. Even contraction, even resistance, nothing falls beyond it. This simplifies everything. There is less need to evaluate each moment, less need to measure progress, less concern about whether things are going right, because the fundamental nature of experience is no longer in question. It has been seen again and again as open, dynamic, and inseparable. From this, a quiet confidence emerges. Not certainty in the mind, but a trust in the nature of what is. You begin to move through life more freely, responding as needed, resting when nothing is required, sometimes clear, sometimes uncertain, but no longer bound to either. This does not remove difficulty. Life still presents challenges. Situations still arise that are complex, emotional, unpredictable, but the relationship to them changes. There is less resistance to what is already happening, less layering of unnecessary struggle. Experience is allowed to unfold, and within that unfolding, appropriate action emerges more naturally. Not perfect, but real, grounded in the moment, rather than in fixed ideas. The Bodhi-Child lives here, not as something separate from you, but as the natural expression of awareness within the conditions of your life. It does not need to be protected. It does not need to be sustained. It simply functions, quietly, directly, without self-importance. And because of this, something else begins to fade. The sense that this is your realization, that it belongs to you, that it needs to be preserved. Instead, there is a recognition that this has never been personal. It is the nature of awareness itself, appearing here as this life, and just as it appears here, it appears everywhere, in every person, in every moment, in every experience, seen or unseen. The gate is not a destination. It is not a final achievement. It is the simple fact that what you are has never been separate from what is. And living the gate is nothing more and nothing less than allowing that to be obvious. Not by effort, not by holding on to an idea, but by no longer overlooking what is already the case. So nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. Nothing needs to be improved. Just this life, as it is, lived without division. The gate is open. It has always been open. And now, it is simply lived.